I was 7 years old the first time I saw one. It was standing in the corner of my classroom, tall, wrong-shaped, like someone had taken a person and stretched them in directions that people do not stretch. None of my classmates could see it. I knew because I watched their faces. They were bored. They were drawing on their notebooks. They were passing notes. Nobody was looking at the corner. I looked at my teacher. She was writing on the board. She had no idea. I did not scream. I did not cry. I just put my head down on my desk and closed my eyes and waited for it to go away. It did go away, eventually. That was the first time. It was not the last. I am 22 now. My name is Lyra. I have white hair that I was born with and gray eyes, and I have spent my entire life seeing things that other people cannot see. Monsters, creatures, things that live in the spaces between what is real and what most people think is real. They are everywhere, in the market, on the bus, standing outside apartment buildings at 3 in the morning. Most of them do not notice me. Some of them do. I learned the rules early. Do not stare. Do not react. Do not let them know you can see them, because the ones that know you can see them are the ones that become interested in you, and interested is never good. I have never told anyone, not my mother, not my friends, not the doctors my parents took me to when I was small and said strange things about what I could see in the room. I learned to keep it to myself. I learned to smile and nod and pretend. I became very good at pretending. My life was small and careful and quiet, and I was fine with that. I had my apartment, my job at the bookshop, my routines. I kept my head down. I stayed inside after dark when I could. And then one night, I saw the man who could see them too. I knew immediately the way he moved through the market, not avoiding the creatures out of ignorance the way normal people did, navigating around them, deliberately, precisely, with the specific awareness of someone who knew exactly where each one was. He was tall, pale skin, black hair, dark green eyes that moved through the crowd the way mine did, looking at things nobody else was looking at. He felt me watching him. He turned and looked directly at me. I looked away immediately. My heart was going very fast. I went home. I locked the door. I told myself I had imagined it. I had not imagined it. He found me 3 days later. I was at the bookshop. It was a slow afternoon. The rain was coming down outside, and I had been sitting behind the counter reading when the bell above the door rang. I looked up. He came inside and shook the rain off his jacket and looked around the shop. Then he looked at me, those dark green eyes, the same ones from the market. My stomach dropped. He walked to the counter slowly. He did not browse. He did not pretend to be interested in the books. He just came straight to me and stood on the other side of the counter and looked at me for a moment. Soren, you saw me at the market on Tuesday. It was not a question. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say I did not know what he was talking about. I was very good at pretending. I had been doing it my whole life. But something about the way he was looking at me made the pretending feel impossible, like he already knew, like pretending would just be embarrassing. Lyra, I do not know what you mean. He tilted his head slightly. Soren, there was a crawler standing 2 feet to your left. You stepped around it without looking at it. You have been doing that your whole life. I did not say anything. My hands were flat on the counter, and I was trying very hard to look calm. Soren, how long have you been able to see them? I stared at him. Nobody had ever asked me that. In 22 years, nobody had ever asked me that because nobody had ever known to ask. Lyra, since I was 7. The words came out before I could stop them. I closed my mouth. He nodded slowly, like this made sense to him, like this was information he had expected. Soren, have any of them ever touched you? Lyra, no, I know the rules. Do not let them know you can see them. Something shifted in his expression, not surprise exactly, something more like respect. Soren, you figured that out on your own. Lyra, I had to. There was nobody to tell me. He was quiet for a moment. He looked at me in a way that was different from how most people looked at me. Most people looked at me and saw my white hair and gray eyes and formed whatever opinion they were going to form. He was looking at me like he was trying to understand something. Soren, my name is Soren. I hunt them, the ones that become dangerous. Lyra's hunt them how? Soren, that is a long conversation. Are you busy tonight? I was not busy. I was never busy. My life was very small and very careful, and my evenings were quiet. I should have said, yes, I am busy. I should have kept my life small and careful. Lyra's no. He almost smiled, almost. Soren, I will come back at 7. He left. I sat behind the counter for a long time after the door closed. In 22 years, I had never met anyone who could see what I could see. I had started to believe I was the only one. I was not the only one. He came back at 7 exactly. We walked. He did not take me anywhere dramatic, just through the city at night. But the city at night was different when you were not trying to ignore what you could see. He pointed things out, not the harmless ones, the dangerous ones. He showed me how to tell the difference, the way the dangerous ones moved, the specific quality of attention they had, the signs that one had noticed you versus one that was just passing through. I had been reading these signs my whole life without knowing there was a name for them. Hearing him describe them out loud was strange, like hearing someone name a color I had always seen but never had a word for. Lyra, how did you learn all of this? Soren, my father hunted them, his mother before him. It is something that runs in certain families. Lyra, nobody in my family can see them. Soren, sometimes it starts fresh. Nobody knows why. We stopped at a small place and got coffee. He sat across from me and I looked at him properly for the first time. He was younger than I had thought at the market, maybe 25, 26. There were things in his dark green eyes that made him seem older, not bitterness, something heavier than that, the weight of knowing things most people did not know and carrying that alone. I recognized it because I had been carrying the same weight my whole life. Lyra, does it get easier, seeing them all the time? He thought about it honestly. I could tell he was not going to give me a comfortable answer. Soren, you get better at managing it. It does not go away. Lyra, that is not very encouraging. Soren, no, but it is true, and I think you have had enough people give you comfortable answers that were not true. I looked at him. He was right. My whole life people had given me comfortable answers. You are imagining things. You are being dramatic. It will get better. None of it was true. Lyra, yes, I have. He nodded. He understood without me having to explain. We talked for 2 hours. I told him things I had never told anyone, about the classroom when I was 7, about the years of pretending, about the specific loneliness of seeing a world that nobody around you could see. He listened to all of it. He did not try to fix it or minimize it. He just listened. When we said goodnight outside the bookshop, I realized something. I had spent 22 years feeling like the most alone person in the world. Tonight, I did not feel that way. He started coming by the bookshop regularly after that. Not every day, but often enough that it became a pattern. He would come in the late afternoon sometimes and sit in the chair by the window and read while I worked. We would talk about what we had both seen that day. He would tell me things about specific creatures. I would tell him things I had noticed over the years that he found useful. He was teaching me, I understood that, but it was not one-sided. I had 22 years of observations that he did not have, things I had noticed by watching carefully without anyone to talk to about them. He was surprised by how much I knew. And then one evening, I made the mistake of following him. I had not planned to. I had been closing the shop and seen him cross the street heading toward the old district, and I had just followed. I told myself I was curious. That was true, but it was not the whole truth. The old district was where they gathered at night. I had known this for years and had always avoided it carefully. Watching him move through, it was different from being there alone. He navigated it with the specific confidence of someone who had done this hundreds of times. He stopped. He turned around. He saw me. His expression was not pleased. Soren, go home. Lyra, I just wanted to see. Soren, I know, go home. I did not go home. I crossed the street to where he was standing. Lyra, I have been navigating places like this alone for 15 years. I am not helpless. Soren, I know you are not helpless. That is not the point. Lyra, then what is the point? He looked at me. Those dark green eyes were frustrated and something else underneath the frustration, something he was not saying. Soren, the point is that they have not noticed you yet. If you come here with me, they will. You become visible. Lyra, I have been visible my whole life. Soren, not to them, not like this. Lyra, you have survived this long because you were careful. Do not stop being careful now. His voice was not unkind. It was the voice of someone who was genuinely worried. I recognized the difference. I went home. But I thought about what he had said for a long time that night. He had said my name. He had said not to stop being careful now. He had said survive. He was afraid for me, not in the way people were usually afraid for me, which was the polite, distant kind. This was different. This was the kind of afraid that cost something. I did not know what to do with that. I asked him about the scars a month after we met. There were 3 of them on his left arm, pale lines that disappeared under his sleeve. I had noticed them the first week, but I had not asked. I had learned that he offered things when he was ready and not before. We were sitting on the steps outside the bookshop after closing. It was a warm evening. He had his sleeves rolled up, and I just asked, "Lyra, what happened to your arm?" He looked at them. He did not look uncomfortable. He looked like a person looking at something they had made their peace with a long time ago. Soren, the first one was from a grinder. I was 17. I had been hunting for 2 years and I got careless. Lyra, a grinders. Soren, you have seen them. They look like moving shadows. Low to the ground, they have edges. I had seen them. I had avoided them very carefully. Lyra and the other 2. Soren, one was from a harvest wraith 2 years ago. The last one was 6 months ago. I made another mistake. Lyra, you make mistakes. Soren, everyone makes mistakes. The difference is what kind of mistakes and how often. I looked at the scars. I thought about what it meant to be 17 years old and hunting something that could leave marks like that. I thought about him doing this alone. His father had hunted before him. I had not asked what had happened to his father. I asked now, "Lyra, your father, is he still hunting?" Soren was quiet for a moment. Soren, no, he died when I was 20, a tide wraith. Those are the worst kind. Lyra, I am sorry. Soren, he knew the risks. He chose this life, so did I. Lyra, that does not mean it does not hurt. He looked at me. I had said it simply, not trying to be wise or comforting, just saying the obvious thing. Soren, no, it does not. We sat there for a while without talking. It was comfortable. We had gotten good at comfortable silence. Then he said something I was not expecting. Soren, I have been doing this alone for 5 years. Since my father died, I have not had anyone to talk to about it. I looked at him. Soren, I do not know how to explain what it is like to have someone who just knows, without having to be told, without having to justify it. I knew exactly what he meant. I had been carrying the same thing in the opposite direction. Lyra, I know. Soren, I know you do. He looked at the street. I looked at the street. The evening was warm and the city was doing its ordinary things around us. 2 people who had been alone with the same invisible world. Not alone anymore. The tide wraith appeared on a Thursday. I was walking home from the bookshop. It was late. I had stayed to finish the accounts and the street was mostly empty. I saw it before I felt it. That was unusual. Tide wraiths were the ones you felt first. A cold that had nothing to do with the temperature, a heaviness in the air. By the time you saw them, they were already close. This one was already very close. I stopped walking. I kept my face neutral. I did not look at it directly. All the rules I had followed for 15 years. Do not let them know you can see them. But this one already knew. I could tell from the way it was moving. It was not passing through. It was coming toward me, specifically and deliberately toward me. My phone was in my bag. I did not reach for it. Any movement that acknowledged what was happening would make it worse. I kept walking, slowly, toward a lit area ahead. The cold got worse. And then Soren was there. I did not see him arrive. He was just suddenly between me and the wraith, standing in the street with something in his hand that I recognized from his descriptions, a bone knife, the only physical thing that worked on a tide wraith. What happened next was fast, too fast for me to follow completely. He moved in a specific way that I had watched him describe but never seen, precise, controlled, without any wasted motion. The wraith was gone in under a minute. He turned around and looked at me. His dark green eyes were very intense. Soren, are you hurt? Lyra's no. Soren, you were walking home alone after dark. Lyra, I do that every night. Soren, not anymore. His voice was not angry. It was the voice of someone who had just been very frightened and was still working through it. I wanted to argue. I had been walking home alone after dark for 15 years. I had managed fine. I was not a child. But I thought about the cold that had been getting worse. I thought about the wraith coming toward me specifically. Something had changed. Something had made me visible in a way I had not been before. I thought about what had changed in the last month. Being around him, going to places where they gathered, talking about them openly instead of pretending they did not exist. He had warned me. Lyra, it knew I could see it. Soren, yes. Lyra, because of you, being around you made me visible. He did not deny it. He looked at me with an expression I had not seen on him before. Guilt, real and unguarded. Soren, I should have been more careful. I should have thought about what it would mean for you. I am sorry. I looked at him standing in the street with the bone knife still in his hand and the guilt on his face. He had come. That was the thing I kept coming back to. He had known somehow and he had come. Lyra, how did you know I was in trouble? He was quiet for a moment. Soren, I always know where you are at night. I have been tracking the ones near your route home for weeks. I stared at him. Lyra, you have been watching over me. Soren, yes. Lyra, without telling me. Soren, you would have told me you did not need it. Lyra, I would have been right. Soren, and tonight. I did not have an answer for tonight. Tonight had been different. Tonight he had been right. I looked at him for a long moment. Lyra's thank you. It came out quietly. He heard it. Something in his face changed. We walked home together. He did not leave until I was inside with the door locked. I stood in my apartment in the dark and thought about what it meant that he had been watching over me for weeks without saying anything, not controlling, not possessive, just quietly making sure I was safe. Nobody had ever done that for me before. I stopped pretending. I did not know what was happening about 3 weeks after the Tide Wraith. It was not one specific moment. It was a lot of small ones. The way I looked for him when I was somewhere crowded and felt better when I found him. The way I remembered things to tell him. The way the bookshop felt different on the days he came in versus the days he did not. The way I had started checking the street before I walked home, not to watch for monsters, but to see if he was there. He was usually there. I had spent my whole life keeping people at a comfortable distance. It was not that I did not like people. It was that people could not know the most important thing about my life, which meant every relationship had a ceiling, a point where it could not go further without me lying or without me telling the truth and losing them. There was no ceiling with Soren. There was no part of my life I had to hide from him, no part of my day I had to translate into a version that made sense to someone who could not see what I could see. I could just say what I saw. I could just be what I was. I did not know what to do with that. It was so new. It was so much. I knew he felt something too. I was not imagining it. I had spent 22 years being very good at reading the room, and I was not misreading this. The way he looked at me sometimes when he thought I was not looking back. The way he was always slightly more careful with his words when they were about me versus when they were about the hunting. The way he had been tracking the creatures near my route home for weeks before I even knew there was a reason to be worried. He felt it too, but he was not doing anything about it, and I thought I understood why. He had lost his father to this life. He knew what it cost. He knew what it meant to care about someone in a world where things like tide wraiths existed, where being visible could get you killed. He was afraid that caring about me would put me in more danger. He was possibly right about that. But I had spent 22 years being careful. I had spent 22 years keeping my life small to stay safe. I had survived, but I had not really been living, not until the last 2 months. I was tired of surviving. I wanted more than that. I told him on a Sunday evening. We were at the small place we had started going to after our walks, the one with the good coffee. He was across from me, and we were talking about a new cluster of creatures that had appeared near the East Bridge and what it usually meant when they gathered like that. Normal conversation, for us. And then I just said it. Lyra, I want to tell you something. He looked up from his coffee. Lyra, I know you have been keeping a distance on purpose. I know you think that getting closer to me will put me in more danger, and you might be right, but I want you to know that I have already decided. However this goes, I do not want less of it. I would rather have this and the risk than the safe version of my life from before. I stopped talking. I looked at him. He was very still, dark green eyes watching me. Lyra, I am not asking you to decide anything right now. I just did not want to keep not saying it. He was quiet for a long time. I waited. I had gotten good at waiting. Soren, I lost my father at 20. I spent 5 years telling myself that attachments made me sloppy, that caring about things made me worse at what I do. I believed that for a long time. I watched his face. He was not finished. Soren, and then I saw a girl at a market stepping around creatures she had been navigating alone since she was 7 years old, with no training, no support, just herself and the rules she had figured out alone. He looked at me directly. Soren, I stopped believing it the first time you walked into the bookshop. That keeping distance keeps you safe. I have been carrying that for 2 months, and it has not gotten easier to carry. My heart was going fast. Lyra then put it down. He reached across the table and put his hand over mine. His hand was warm. I turned my hand over and held it. We sat there for a while. The coffee got cold. Neither of us moved. I had spent 22 years alone with something nobody else could see. I was done being alone with it. Things changed after that and stayed the same. We were still careful. He still hunted. I still worked at the bookshop. We still walked at night and talked about what we saw, but the distance was gone. The thing we had been carrying separately was now something we carried together. He started listening differently. He had always listened to my observations, but now he used them directly. I could see things he sometimes missed, not because he was less skilled, because we saw differently. He had been trained to focus on the dangerous ones. I had spent 15 years watching all of them, the patterns, the behaviors, the small signs that something was about to change before it changed. There was a night when he was tracking something he had been following for weeks. A collector, one of the worst kinds. They gathered things, objects sometimes, people sometimes. He had been trying to locate where it was settling. Collectors always settled before they acted. He needed to find it before it was ready. I had seen it 3 times in the past month. I had not told him because I had not understood what I was seeing. After he described what he was looking for, I knew. Lyra, the building on Marsh Street, the one with the blue door. I have seen it there twice in the last 2 weeks. He went very still. Soren, you are sure? Lyra, I have been seeing them for 15 years. I am sure. He went that night. I did not follow. We had an agreement now. I did not follow. He came back before midnight and told me it was done. He looked at me in the doorway of my apartment. Soren, I would not have found it without you. Lyra, yes, you would have, eventually. Soren, not in time. There were 3 people who came into that building regularly. They would have been taken by the end of the week. I absorbed that. 3 people who would have been taken. 3 people who were fine because I had seen something and told him. 22 years of seeing things and never being able to use it. Never being able to help anyone because I could never tell anyone. Now I could. Lyra, so we are a good team. Soren, yes, we are. He smiled, a real one. I was collecting his real smiles the way I used to collect observations. They were rare and they were worth it. 6 months later, my life did not look like it used to. It was still small in some ways, still the bookshop, still the apartment, still the cat in the window, but it felt different now. It felt chosen rather than settled for. Soren spent most evenings at the bookshop after closing. We had a system. He would tell me what he was tracking. I would tell him what I had seen. We would map it together. I had started keeping records. 15 years of observations organized into something useful. Patterns, behaviors, locations, things that had never been written down before because there had never been anyone to write them down. He said it was the most complete record of creature, behavior he had ever seen. I told him that was because most hunters went out looking for them. I had spent 15 years sitting still and watching them come to me. Soren, you should have been doing this from the beginning. Lyra, I was doing this from the beginning. I just had nobody to give it to. He looked at me when I said that, the way he sometimes looked at me that made me feel like he was still working out how much I had carried alone for so long and finding it larger every time he thought about it. I did not need his sympathy, but I did not mind being seen. There were still hard nights, nights when something he was tracking was worse than expected, nights when I saw something near the bookshop that made the old fear come back, the specific cold dread of being noticed. But we handled the hard nights differently now. We handled them together. One evening he came to the bookshop after a bad night. He sat in the chair by the window and did not say much. I did not push him to talk. I just made tea and sat across from him and was present. After a while he said, "Soren, I keep thinking about what my father would say about all of this. Lyra, what do you think he would say?" He was quiet for a moment. "Soren, that I should have found you sooner." I looked at him. He was looking at the window. The city outside was doing its ordinary things. Somewhere out there, the creatures moved through the dark. They would always move through the dark. But we were here, in a warm bookshop with tea, together. That was also not going to change. I used to think the seeing was a curse. When I was 7 and too afraid to look at the corner of my classroom. When I was 15 and sat alone at lunch, because being around people meant constantly managing what I could see and they could not. When I was 20 and turned down every invitation that involved being out after dark. When I was 22 and my life was so small and so careful that I had almost convinced myself it was enough. I do not think that anymore. 3 people are alive because I saw something on Marsh Street. There have been others since. There will be more. I will never know most of their names. They will never know mine. But they are there, walking around, living their lives, because I saw something and I said something and it mattered. That is not a curse. That is something else entirely. Soren is asleep in the chair by the bookshop window. He does that sometimes. Falls asleep after a long night. I never wake him. I just work around him and let him sleep. He looks different when he is asleep. Younger. The thing in his eyes that is always there when he is awake goes quiet and he just looks like a person. A tired one who has been doing difficult things for a long time. I am writing this at the counter. The record, the 15 years of observations plus the months since we met. It is getting long. It is getting useful. He says it will help people after us. People who can see what we can see and do not know what to do with it. I think about the 7-year-old version of me, in the classroom, head on her desk, waiting for it to go away. I wish I could tell her. It does not go away, but it gets a name, and you get better at it. And one day you walk into a market and you see someone moving through the crowd the same way you do, and you understand that you were never as alone as you thought. That you were just waiting. Soren shifts in the chair, his eyes open. He looks at me. Soren, how long have I been asleep? Lyra, 2 hours. Soren, you should have woken me. Lyra, you needed the sleep. He looks at me in the way he has that I never get tired of, like I am the most interesting thing in the room, like he is still figuring me out and finds the process worthwhile. I close the record. I put down my pen. Outside the window, the city moves through its night. The creatures are out there. They will always be out there. But we are in here, warm, together. That is enough. That is more than enough. It is everything.